This is recording 814. The name of my podcast is Listen Next 814. You can find me at speakingtothecia.com, or you can find me at christinastation918.com. The name of my podcast is Speaking to the CIA. So, I'm in a state of shock right now. I've already decoded this, what I'm about to go over with you. And some of it's on my Pinterest. Unless Jean ripped it off posing as me. She loves to pose as me. And you guys know who Jean Roberts is. It's my dad's ex-girlfriend. She's nearly 80 years old. She's hell-bent on trying to be me. Anyway, so... Okay. So... I'm just in shock right now. Okay, so... In 1999, I went to go, my boys and I, Anthony and Michael and I, went to go stay at my dad's, who lived in New Orleans. Okay, he lives in Slidell. Okay, and so we were there for a couple of months, and then we moved back. I had broken up with my first husband, and we moved back. I had gotten back with my husband, and we moved back a couple months later. So we weren't there for about like 3 or 4 months. Okay. So anyway, while we were there, I went to New Orleans. Okay. I went on a date. I went to New Orleans to go have fun downtown. And anyway, I was downtown and I had been drinking. I was drunk. I was pretty toasted. So, my God, even she did that to me. 1976, 5 years old with the freaking toaster. Toasted, she freaking did that too. And then my grandpa, whose life she took, he was in Toastmasters. Anyway, so I was toasted. I was lit. Anyway, okay, so I was walking with my date, and we were walking down the street, and we got off on one of the side streets, and we had just visited Pat O'Brien's, the Pat O'Brien's bar. And we got off on a side street, and there was like nobody there. And all of a sudden, we saw this guy running towards us, and he was like, "Help me, help me, help me, help me." And he was crying and screaming. He was in major pain. He was an African American male, and he was about my age. Anyway, so his forehead was bleeding profusely, heavy bleeding. And I'm freaking out. I'm drunk and I can't get my wits about me. Like, I can't get my senses. I'm just like, is he drunk? Like, I'm watching him head towards us and I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, look, he's as drunk as we are. And I'm like, talking to my date, and I'm like, he's as drunk as we are. And I'm watching him like stumble and walk towards us, and I think it's all funny. And then he gets close, and then I see his head is bleeding, and so I'm like, oh my God, he's bleeding. And then I'm freaking out, and I'm like trying to like shake myself into like having sense in my head, but I didn't have any sense in my head because I was so drunk, and I was trying to like figure out what was going on. So anyway, he falls on the ground, and he's leaned up against the building, and he's like, "You've got to go get help." And I'm like, "What happened to you? What happened to you? What happened to you?" And he said that somebody bashed him over the head with a beer bottle. And so, anyway, I was freaking out because, like, they literally, whoever hit him over the head with their beer bottle, literally, like, gashed his head open. So anyway, I'm like, where do we go? Like, what do we do? And then there were more people that had showed up at this scene, and they were like, go down to there's a store at the end of the street. There's like a little corner market. Go down to the corner market and ask them for towels and let them know that we have an injury. And so I go down there and I go into the corner market and I'm asking them for help. But of course I'm drunk and I'm like, da, 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 da. And so they get really mad and they're like, leave out of my store, leave. And so then I get mad. And so I'm like, why are you getting mad? I'm asking you for help. There's an emergency. And I'm like screaming at them. And they're like, leave, get out of my store. And then I'm like, and then I'm screaming back and they're screaming at me. And then they're like, leave now. And so I left and then I headed back over to the guy. And anyway, there's now a small crowd around them, and I'm like, they wouldn't help me. I don't know what to do. And they said they got the New Orleans police, that they'll be there in a minute. And so literally the New Orleans police show up. And they're like prepared for anything, I swear to God. But anyway, they show up. They got the trunk open of their car, and they've got like all like a huge first aid kit, like anything you could like ever need in a first aid kit. Like they got everything. Like they got a mini hospital in the trunk of their car. Like I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, they're helping the guy. And so it was like a scary, it's a scary memory for me, and it's a sad memory for me because this poor guy. So anyway, when I began decoding 10 years ago, I realized that Gene committed that crime, that Gene did that to that guy. And so at the time period that this was during the NCAA college basketball playoffs, and the playoffs were in New Orleans. And so I know she did that. Like, I'm supposed to go back in time and trip out. So I know she did that. Like, I go back in time and I'm like, you freaking did that. You committed that crime. And I knew she was using artificial intelligence to do it. But I'm like, how do I even, like, when I first, like, figured this out, I'm like, how do I even begin to explain this? She's using, like, freaking robotic technology on people. She crashed a beer bottle into his head. So anyway, I'm, like, freaking out. So anyway, then later on, a couple years later, stop controlling my speech, who's ever trying to control my speech. Anyway, a couple of years later, I think when I got to, it might have been when I was in Dallas. It might be here when I got here. I think it was when I got here to Oxford. I went back. It was here because I have it on my Pinterest. I decoded it. So anyway, I went back to, but I've been back over and over it several times. But anyway, I decoded the collegiate basketball, and it was like the whole thing was fixed. And then the more I decoded it was linked to her fixing the Super Bowl in 1986 when I lived in Chicago. And I knew Refrigerator Jones from the Chicago Bears went to the beer bottle being crashed on this guy's skull. So I decoded a whole bunch of this stuff, and it's on my Pinterest, Christina Station 918. So anyway, I decoded the whole thing out. So here's more. So what she's using here is, she's using NWA and MC Hammer, okay? So on my way walking towards the guy. On our way walking towards the guy, I had gotten a glass, a Pat O'Brien's glass that I had my drink in, and I wanted to save the glass. Anyway, I had it in my left hand, and I'm walking towards the guy. I'm stumbling towards him, and he's stumbling towards us. And my left hand was out, and she's using ice on me, and she smashes my glass on a stop sign that's on the street. So my glass gets totally obliterated. And of course, I'm all upset because my Pat O'Brien glass is all like totally like busted. So anyway, so what she's doing there is she's making a reference to MC Hammer, where he says stop, and then in his song, and then she's making a reference to MC Hammer, the album MC Hammer, which I'll get to in a minute. MC Hammer, Please Don't Hurt Him, which came out in 1990. Like, she used MC Hammer's album as a theme. So she also used NWA. She's using Eazy-E. Now, this is a whole, Gene uses a whole alcohol and drug theme and all that, using her crap cover-up her Synanon mixed with Charles Manson. So anyway, she's referring to Eazy-E as in Easy Does It. So she's using Eazy-E, and then they have the album 100 Miles and Running. And then when I took off, like running, going to the grocery store, you can see how she tore up the initials NWA, like inwards running away. And my childhood nickname is Nina. So, like, she thinks it's freaking funny. So, anyway, so moving forward, staying with this, okay, so the Pat O'Brien's connects to Bennigan's, okay? Bennigan's is a restaurant, okay? So Bennigan's, one night, this is in 1984 or 1985. I lived on Emerald. This is in Arizona. I lived off of Alma School in Southern. I lived on Emerald, and I was out front with my friends, and we were out like playing in the street. We stayed out after dark all the time and played out in the street till our parents yelled at us to go in. Anyway, one night I was out there with my friends, and my mom and Jeff were like, we're going out to dinner, we're going out to eat. And they're like, come on, let's go. And I was like, I don't want to go. I wanted to stay with my friends. And they're like, come on, let's go. And I'm like, where are we going? And then they said, we're going to Bennigan's. And I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I want to stay here. And they were like, no, you're going. So anyway, we went out to go eat at Bennigan's. Now, since then, Gene Roberts has also used this as a theme in Planning My Future Ex-Husband, Ben, and then you can see Ben again, da, 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 da. You can see Gene just having a trollop of a good time, just ice raping all of us, all of our lives, talking the hell out of all of us. Anyway, so Bennigan's was crazy because when we were eating there, and it's a sign of my future, like being in New Orleans, because she's controlling my life. So, and this is before I even went to Chicago. I'm sorry, my speech is being controlled. She pre-planned for me to go to New Orleans, Chicago, Oklahoma in the early 70s. I decoded all of it. So anyway, I love all areas very much, and I turn Gene in because nobody wants the freaking Ku Klux Klan baby broking their families, stalking them, making money off them, and committing terrorism. So I'll just keep turning Gene Roberts in, who's the kingpin. So anyway, at Bennigan's, this was the craziest restaurant because the waitresses were all dressed up in they were all dressed up in costumes, and they gave you funny drinks. Like my mom got this one drink. She ordered one drink, and the drink was in a toilet. Like they had a ceramic toilet, and they fixed her a cocktail and put it in the drink. But like the drinks were weird. And I was a kid, and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And the waitresses are all like dressed up. And then later that goes to me being that later, I'm sorry, stop acting like you're me. Anyway, later on when I went to Chicago, when I went to go live in Chicago, that goes to Ed Debevic's. There's Ed Debevic's right there, Bennigan's Emerald. So anyway, Ed Debevic's is one of my favorite restaurants. And at the time, there was only one. There was only two. There was one in Chicago, and there was one in Phoenix. So anyway, Ed Debevic's is like a 50s diner restaurant in Chicago, and it's an awesome restaurant. Anyway, so Ed Debevic's is in there. So it's again more of the costume and all of that. So anyway, when I lived on Emerald Street, okay, is when I got stabbed. Okay, this stabbing was another child abuse ring that Jean ran pre-planning, and she pre-planned to stab me when I was in 5th grade. Okay, I still have a scar on my wrist. I decoded it all out. Anyway, she used ice on one of my friends named Aaron. She used ice on me, and then all hell broke loose. I got stabbed, and I took off freaking running. And this was out in the front yard. Well, I was in the street, and I took off running across the street, up the driveway, into the house. Blood was squirting out of my wrist like freaking Spider-Man. And instead of it being a spider web, it was blood. And it was every freaking where, just spurting everywhere. When I got into the house, I was screaming and crying. And there was so much blood everywhere. It was squirting all over the walls. It was like from the height of like a doorknob down, like the whole wall was covered in blood. There was so much blood on the floor. It was clotting like jelly on the floor. There was freaking blood everywhere. And my parents, my mom and Jeff were downstairs watching Ghostbusters. Well, I was outside, and that was on in the freaking background. So anyway, okay. So the stabbing also goes to this incident at Jean links her stabbing me to this Pat O'Brien's where she's smashing, using ice again, smashing a beer bottle into this guy's head. Okay, so that the stabbing goes together, only it's this guy's head versus my wrist. Okay, so also linked to this is Mr. Lucky's, okay, in Tempe. Now, okay, so what's the full name of Patrick? Okay, Rick was a boyfriend, I guess. I don't know. I just know him as my mom's friend. But I guess he was a boyfriend of my mom, a friend or boyfriend of my mom when I was really little. And I told you he had a farm in Tempe. And I was like 3 years old. I was like 2 or 3 or 4 years old. I don't even think I was 4. I was 2 or 3 years old. And my mom would go see Rick on the farm, and I would get to feed the chicks, and I got to feed a calf. So anyway, she's making a reference to my mom's friend Rick, okay? So then she makes a backward reference to Mr. Lucky's. Now, Mr. Lucky's is a bar. Hang on a second. What is the name of that other bar that I went to? Hang on. Stop controlling my speech. Mr. Lucky's is a bar that my dad was a bouncer at in Tempe. There was a bar in the same area. It was on Mill Avenue that I went to when I was a teenager. It's Sergeant Pepper's. Sergeant Pepper's. So there it is right there, stabbing Sergeant and then Peppers. You can see Peppers in there, PBR. So, and then later on, she's arranging my dad's relationships. And so then she controls the relationship. She arranges the relationship between my dad and Kathy. And then they buy the Bouvier and they named him Pepper. So she iced him. And then I know that she took his dog's life, Gene Roberts. But anyway, so, to see all code around, everything Pepper. So anyway, Mr. Lucky's connects to this because of the Lucky and the Bennigans and the Emerald. Okay, so that's where he was a bouncer at, which is Mill Avenue is near ASU. And then she also did that Alma School in Southern. And then, okay, so she's also making a reference to here going back in time to the early 70s when I was little in grade school, living in Globe when I lived on East and Cottonwood, 306 East Street. Okay, so the stairs that I used to climb home, my mom would tell me to take a different route when walking home, but I would always go the back route and climb the stairs. In present day, if you go to Google Maps and you go find where those stairs are, you see Gene somehow iced a Jeep to be sitting there on the right, just bragging about buying and selling and abusing kids for 60 years, just proud as hell, trying to steal my life story and my identity and pretending to be me and everything else. But anyway, so that really is supposed to be, she's using that as a Mayan temple is what she's using that. Not in me climbing the stairs, but I always climbed on this side. Like I would really take the stairs. I always wanted to climb in the rocks and the dirt on the side. But anyway, she's using that to say I am going to be sacrificed in the future when I grow up. So that's supposed to be a Mayan temple. Now, if you look, okay, so temple and then Tempe and then Mayan is May. Okay, and emerald is the stone for May. Now, also, the year that this happened again was in 1999. So she's making a Mayan calendar reference. She's also using Synanon because, oh my gosh, New Orleans, because that's where everybody goes to party. You party your butt off, and then, you party till Fat Tuesday, and then the next day is Ash Wednesday, and then partying is done. So she's using Synanon, so Synanon's in there. Now, if you go to MC Hammer's album, he mentions Gene. I didn't read all the specifics of this. I'm just like quick looking at what Gene did using MC Hammer. So inside his album, if you go look up Wikipedia, it came out in 1999. James Early is in this, okay? She's using James Earl Jones in this too. Gene Roberts is like sewing and stitching her way through, thinking she's going to make herself famous, which she's probably pissed off every artist everywhere. Anyway, so at this time frame in 1999, when I went back, I'd already started working at Online in Bartlesville, and my boss was Irish, Tom and Peggy O'Connor. I love them to death. I'd already started working at Online, and then I went to New Orleans, and then when I came back, I went back to work at Online. So one of the guys that worked there with me, He was, he loved making movies. He was a film producer. He had him and his girlfriend worked there, and her name was Janie, and his name was Sean Early. So she's using Sean Early to connect to James Early here. So also, it says on here, on MC Hammers, it says recorded on a modified tour bus between May 1988 and November 1989. So you can see May again, Emerald, and you can see my birthday month, November, and then you can see my high school graduation year, 1989. And then if you look at the initials of his album, it looks exactly like Gene, and you can tell a couple things here. Gene has got all kinds of outs here. Gene is trying to make it look like she's not from New Orleans doing it, number one. And she is. She's from Milton, Florida, but she worked in New Orleans. And remember, I told you she is the leader of a witches coven there. The statewide witches coven. I don't know if she's still the leader of it, but that's one of the states she's the lead witch of. She's the lead witch of witches covens in 5 different states. So anyway, she's also trying to make it look like a fraternity did it. Because if you look at the initials in his album, you can tell she's trying to make it look like it's a fraternity. So also something else to point out. So when Gene Roberts planned to do the stock market crash in 2017 to 2019, okay, she planned to do that before she did the Oklahoma City bombing. When I decoded the Oklahoma City bombing, remember I told you in my previous podcast, I could see her planning to do all these crashes, these housing crashes and car crashes and everything else. And I think not long before that, there was a .com crash. So anyway, so the Oklahoma City bombing was in 1995. And look what she did to MC Hammer here. It looks like she's like trying to frame him. And he's like, got it like worded in here. Like, I've already got this figured out, Christina, if you see it. He's not going to be freaking blamed or framed. So anyway, so MC Hammer, Stanley Kirk Burrell, went from a peak 70 million fortune to filing for bankruptcy in 1996. He had to file for Chapter 11. So 1996, that was a year after the Oklahoma City bombing. So you can tell she crashed him too. And somebody said, you can tell she was stealing from MC Hammer because the same way I get pilfered from every payday, I get robbed. Gene is robbing banks, accounts. She robs everything. Even as like something as stupid as like me buying something and then her breaking it, so I have to buy another one. Any way she can pilfer, including doing things like ripping off utilities and everything else. She steals everything. So anyway, you can tell what she's doing to me. You can tell she did to him back in the day. And I was told in my brain, they're like, because everybody always says Suge Knight, Suge Knight, Suge Knight. I know a Suge Knight. I got to meet him in Mental Telepathy. For everybody to say Suge Knight, that would be the typical thing to say. So anyway, Suge Knight's people came on and they're like, because I'm like, they're like, Christina, God, I wish you knew Suge Knight. And I'm like, well, I do. I got to meet him in Mental Telepathy in Oklahoma City. And they're like, no, I wish you knew him like you know all these artists that you love, because, man, he's got a lot to say. Because I don't know what's going on, but I can tell you whatever she did to MC Hammer, she did to him too. And then people started talking about what she did to NWA. And then people started getting even more mad, like really, really, really pissed off. So anyway, that is the end of this recording.